Hello, it's Jeremy Coho here, Technical Marketing Engineer within the Enterprise Networks business at Cisco Systems. Going to be doing a quick demo today with Ansible for the wireless stack. So I'm going to be just doing a quick introduction to Ansible, so what is it and how do we use it? And then I'll do two quick demos, one with the Catalyst 9800 wireless LAN controller, and the next one will be against the AireOS, the legacy wireless LAN controllers. So Ansible, what is it? It's pretty simple to install and get started. It's written in Python and it's basically for task automation. We can define some variables, we can use some templates, and one main feature of Ansible is that it is agentless, so we're not required to install any additional software on our network device. In this case, the network device being the wireless LAN controllers. But we can use Ansible to interface against our iOS XE switches and routers, as well as any other Linux or open source system that has any sort of telnet, SSH, or netconf type of interface. So when we're working with Ansible, there's a couple roles and terms that we need to be familiar with, and how they all work together is displayed on the screen here. So at the very top level, we have a role, and that's going to be a set of playbooks. A playbook is a set of reusable tasks or standard configurations. And then within that playbook, we have plays, tasks, and modules. So module, as we'll see in the example, we're going to be using the iOS module or the AireOS module. And the task and the play, we'll see when we actually get to the demos how we're actually using those. But here's an example here of a playbook. So as I draw this slide, we have the entire playbook out listed here, and then that's the play. So the actual configuration is the play. Within that, we have a task. So the specific task in the example here is to configure a management VRF. And how we're going to do that, how we're going to accomplish that is by using this module, and that's going to be by using the iOS VRF module, for example. So there are a lot of references and resources available for Ansible. Ansible has been around for many number of years here, so I definitely recommend checking out the developer.cisco.com resources to get started with network devices in Ansible. Now, if we don't already have Ansible installed, it's relatively easy to get going. If we're using Mac OS X, we have the easy install binary already installed by default, so we can use easy install to install pip. Once we have pip installed, then we can use pip to install Ansible. Now, if we are on a system that has apt, such as Debian or Ubuntu, then we can use apt install Ansible to easily install that. Of course, the docs.ansible.com website has full details, as well as lots of help and other information available in the links listed here. As well, there's additional resources on DevNet and on GitHub, as well as the actual docs.ansible site, as I mentioned before. So lots of resources to get you going with Ansible. Okay, so we talked about what Ansible is, and now actually let's get into how we use it with the Catalyst 9800. So the 9800 is a relatively new platform, and it comes in a variety of flavors. At the very top, we have the 9800, the 9840, and the 9880, so these are the appliances. We also have the 9800 CL, or the cloud version. So in the demos today, I'm running the 9800 CL in an on-prem VMware ESXi environment. And of course, we have support for the wireless controller embedded in the 9800. These are the access points that are supported. But let's move on to the actual demo here. So what are we going to be doing here? I have basically three files that we need to interface with. The first one is the host file, and that's going to define how we connect to the device, the IP address, the username and password, and some of the connection details. And then after we have actually defined our hosts, we have the YAML files. So these are going to be what we actually want to do with Ansible. So I have two examples here. So the first one is the cat9800 setup netconf.yaml, and the second one is the cat9800 show.yaml. So the setup netconf YAML, when we execute that, we're going to be sending a couple of commands here. We're going to be sending the AAA new model, AAA authorization and authentication, and then I'm actually going to be creating another user. So the username is going to be netconf. And then I'm actually going to enable the netconf interface by sending the netconf yang command. Once I've set that up, I'm going to verify and check that that's been successful. So to do that, I'm going to use the cat9800 show.yaml file. So that file is just basically going to do a show run and include netconf. It's going to do a show version, and it can do a show telemetry to let us know what telemetry I've already configured on here. So as you can see, the host file and the YAML file work together to both connect to the device and to send some commands for us. I have here just the text output from the YAML and the host file that I have. But what I'll do now is let's actually move over to the CLI. We'll move over to the console, connect to this device, and send these commands here. So here I am on the Ubuntu server here, and if I do a ls, I can see that I have those 3 files. So let's take a look at these in a little bit more detail here. So I've defined the host as cat9800. This is the host name for my specific cat9800. It's jcoho-cat9800-1. And here I've defined the variables of how we're going to connect into the device. So we're going to use the network CLI connection. The iOS is the network OS that we're connecting to. And I'm going to be using a username, admin, and password is Cisco123, using the default SSH port of 22. And then I've actually specified the IP address of the device that we're going to connect to, in this case 10.12.12.1. So let me go over here and copy and paste the command that we can actually send to interface with the device. So if I paste this command here, what's going to happen is I'm saying let's disable Ansible host key checking. Now this is so that I do not validate the SSH key. Often in my lab I'm changing devices around, and oftentimes the SSH host key fails validation. So I'm going to specifically disable that here. Next, I'm going to call the Ansible Playbook. This is the binary that I download with apt-get or with pip. And then I'm going to say the host file is going to be this cat9800 host, which we just looked at. And then the YAML file is going to be the cat9800 show. So when I run this command, let's run it here, and we'll watch to see what happens. First, it's going to connect and give us some of the debug out here. So the only debug that I have here is the uptime here. So it's telling us that the uptime is about 1 week and 10 minutes. And you'll notice here that there's no output from the second task that I ran here. So let's actually just take a look at this show command to see what exactly we were expecting to see. So here we're saying that I'm going to connect to that 9800 host. And some of the commands that I'm going to run are show version, checking for the uptime. That's what we see right here. And then the second command I'm going to run is a show run and include netconf. So as we can see here, there's actually no output here. And that's because there's nothing in the configuration right now that has netconf defined. So next, what I want to do is run the next YAML file, which is going to be the cat9800 setup.yaml. So I'm going to go ahead and run this now, and it's going to send some CLI commands that I've already defined in that YAML file. So what we can see here is the file has finished sending now, and it said that we've changed one thing. And let's actually take a look at this YAML file and see what we were sending. So here are the commands that we were sending, AAAs, and then here's the create the username and to enable the netconf yang interface. Also, we have this save unmodified so that once we send these commands, the running config is saved. So that's great. What we've now done is we use Ansible to create a new user and enable netconf yang on this device. Let's go back and run this show command again. And what I'm expecting to see is these 2 lines added here. So we're going to see that there's a username and that the netconf yang interface has been created. This is exactly what we're expecting. Okay, so we've ran the playbook against the cat9800 and have the results as expected. Let's carry this example on to see how we can interface Ansible with the AireOS wireless controllers. So these are the current wireless LAN controllers that are running AireOS, starting from Mobility Express, the 3504, the 5520, and the 8540, depending on the scale and the number of clients that are needed to be supported in the environment. So very similar to what we had with the Catalyst 9800, same thing with AireOS. We have the host file that defines how we're going to connect, the username and password and the IPs. And then we have the config and the show YAML. So in this example, we're going to disable, we're going to send the config telemetry webhook disable command, or we can run the show commands. It's going to give us the show boot. Same thing that I had before with the Catalyst 9800. This is just a text example. So these are .yaml files, so the spacing is very important here. If you have some dashes or some spaces instead of tabs, then you might not be successful. So definitely when you are working with Ansible, I recommend to use a YAML validator, and I use one that's online. Okay, so this is what we're going to be doing here. It's basically sending the same commands, but instead of using the Catalyst 9800 configuration files, we'll use the AireOS files. So let's move back here to the command line interface. Let's move over to this directory where we have the AireOS files, and let's take a look at the files again here. So here's the host file. And we have our AireOS controller defined as AireOS WLC1. We're using the local connection. We're going to be connecting with the Ansible user, Ansible password, their default SSH port of 22. And you'll notice the IP address is different here. So it's 10.12.12.5 in this example. So let's run the show command here first, and we'll see what we have when we actually run this, what kind of output it's going to give us. And then let's take a look at the YAML file once it's finished here. So here's the YAML file, and we're basically asking for two commands. We're asking for a show boot and a show management user. So here's the output from the show boot. We can see that's running 8.8.3.18. And then for my show management users, we can see that we have two users defined. We have the admin user and the Ansible user. So let's go ahead now and take a look at what we're going to configure on here. So if we take a look at the AireOS config.yaml file, we can see that I'm setting two configuration parameters here. I'm setting the network DNS server IP so that my controller can resolve some DNS names. And then in this case, I'm going to be adding another user here. So I'm going to be adding a user with the username Ansible user. So if I go and run this now, change it from executing the show to the config YAML file, we'll execute this and we should see an additional user be created here. So the task is completed. We see that one thing has been changed and we don't get any output, and that's by design. So let's go and run the show YAML again. Here's the show YAML. And what I'm expecting to see here is one additional user being created, and that's exactly what we see. We still see the output from show boot, but now that we've added the additional user, there's three users created here. We have admin, Ansible, and the newly created Ansible user. So that's what I have for the demo, just a very quick, brief introduction to Ansible, how we can use it to interface with the Catalyst 9800 wireless LAN controller, as well as with the AireOS WLCs. Thank you.